The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly in the small grocery store on the edge of a quiet Ohio suburb, their cold glow casting sharp shadows across the aisles. It was late afternoon, the kind of gray, humid day in mid-April 2025 that made the air feel heavy. Outside, the parking lot was half empty, with a few cars idling under the weight of a looming storm. Inside, the store smelled of overripe bananas, stale coffee from a machine near the register, and the faint chemical tang of floor cleaner. The shelves were stocked but slightly disheveled, cans tilted at odd angles, a box of cereal lying flat where it didn't belong. This was Harper's Market, a family-owned relic that had served the community for decades, its faded sign a testament to better days. Leon Carter, a 42-year-old high school history teacher, stepped through the automatic doors, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. He adjusted his glasses and glanced at the list in his hand: milk, eggs, bread, and a few vegetables for tonight's dinner. His daughter Aisha had been begging for zucchini fries, and he'd promised to make them. Leon's face softened at the thought of her grin, but his shoulders were tense. He'd heard whispers about Harper's Market, stories from neighbors about rude staff, judgmental stares, especially for folks who didn't fit the mold of this mostly white neighborhood. But it was the closest store, and he was tired after a long day of grading papers. The store was nearly empty, save for an elderly woman examining canned soups and a teenage stock boy lazily pushing a cart of boxes. Behind the lone open register stood Bella Hoffman, a wiry woman in her late 50s with thin lips and a pinched expression. Her name tag was crooked, and her blonde hair, streaked with gray, was pulled into a tight bun that seemed to mirror her demeanor. Bella's eyes flicked up as Leon entered, narrowing slightly before she returned to wiping down the counter with aggressive swipes. Leon grabbed a basket and moved toward the dairy aisle, his steps measured. He was used to the occasional glance, the subtle shift in posture when he entered a room. Growing up black in the Midwest had taught him to read those cues early: tight smiles, crossed arms, the way someone might clutch a purse a little tighter. But he'd also learned to carry himself with quiet confidence, a habit honed over years of teaching restless teenagers and navigating faculty meetings, where he was often the only person of color. He picked up a carton of milk, checked the date, and placed it in his basket. The store was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerators and the faint crackle of an old radio playing country music from behind the counter. As he reached for a loaf of bread, he heard Bella's voice, sharp and carrying across the store. "Hey, you need to show me what's in that basket." Leon froze, his hand still on the bread. He turned slowly, meeting Bella's glare. She stood with her hands on her hips, her face flushed with a mix of suspicion and something uglier. "Excuse me," Leon said, his voice calm but firm, the kind he used when a student tested his patience. "You heard me," Bella snapped, stepping out from behind the counter. Her apron swung as she moved, her eyes locked on him. "I've seen your type before. Think you can just take what you want and walk out?" The elderly woman in the soup aisle glanced over, her hands tightening on a can of chicken noodle. The stock boy, a lanky kid with acne, stopped pushing his cart and stared, his mouth slightly open. Leon's jaw clenched, but he kept his expression neutral. He'd been here before, not in this store, but in moments like this. Moments where the air grew thick with unspoken assumptions, where his very presence seemed to be a provocation. "I'm just shopping," Leon said, holding up his basket. "Milk, bread, some vegetables. I'm happy to show you." Bella's lips curled into a sneer. "Don't play innocent with me. I know how this works. You think because it's a small store, no one's watching? I've been here 20 years. I know a thief when I see one." The word hit like a slap, Thief. Leon's heart pounded, but he took a slow breath, grounding himself. He could feel the eyes of the other customers boring into him, the weight of their silence. The elderly woman shuffled back a step, her gaze darting between Leon and Bella. The stock boy looked like he wanted to disappear. "Ma'am," Leon said, his voice steady, "I'm a teacher at Lincoln High. I live 2 blocks from here. I'm just trying to buy groceries for my daughter. If you want to check my basket, go ahead. But there's no need for this." Bella's face hardened, her eyes glinting with defiance. "Don't you ma'am me. I don't care who you say you are. People like you always have a story." She took a step closer, her voice rising. "You're not fooling anyone." The elderly woman gasped softly, clutching her can like a shield. The stock boy shifted uncomfortably, his sneakers scuffing the floor. Leon felt the heat creeping up his neck, the familiar sting of being reduced to a stereotype. But he didn't raise his voice. He didn't step back. Instead, he set the basket on the floor and crossed his arms, meeting Bella's gaze head-on. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said, each word deliberate. "But I'm not going to let you talk to me like this. If you have a problem, we can discuss it civilly." Bella laughed, a harsh, barking sound that echoed in the quiet store. "Civilly? You don't get to tell me how to run my store. You want civility? Then get out and don't come back." The air felt electric, charged with the weight of her words. Leon's mind raced. He could walk away, take his money elsewhere, let this moment fade into the long list of indignities he'd learned to swallow. But something in him resisted. Not anger, not pride, but a quiet resolve. He thought of Aisha, of the world she was growing up in. He thought of his students, the ones who looked to him for guidance in a world that often judged them before they spoke. He wasn't just standing here for himself. "Miss Hoffman," he said, reading her name tag, "I'm not leaving until we talk this through. You've made an assumption about me, and it's wrong. I'd like to understand why you feel this way." Bella's face flushed a deeper red, her hands balling into fists. "You don't get to lecture me. This is my store, my rules. You think you can come in here, acting all high and mighty? I know what you're about." The elderly woman finally spoke, her voice trembling but clear. "Bella, maybe you should calm down. He's just trying to shop." Bella whirled on her. "Stay out of this, Marjorie. You don't know what it's like running this place, dealing with people who think they can take advantage." Marjorie flinched, but didn't back down. "I've known you for years, Bella. This isn't you. What's going on?" Leon seized the opening, his voice still measured. "That's a good question. What's going on, Miss Hoffman? Why am I a threat to you?" Bella's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. The stock boy, still frozen near the canned goods, muttered, "She's been like this all week. Ever since that break-in." Leon's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Break-in." Bella's eyes darted to the boy, her voice sharp. "Kyle, shut up." But Kyle, emboldened by the tension, kept talking. "Some kids smashed a window last week, took some stuff. She's been freaking out ever since." Leon nodded slowly, piecing it together. "I'm sorry that happened," he said, his tone genuine. "That must have been scary. But I'm not those kids. I'm just a guy trying to buy eggs." Bella's shoulders stiffened, but her bravado faltered. The store was silent now, the radio's twang the only sound. Marjorie stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Bella, you're better than this. You know you are." The moment hung in the balance, fragile and raw. Leon waited, his heart steady, his eyes locked on Bella's. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew he wasn't backing down. Not today. The air in Harper's Market grew thicker, the hum of the fluorescent lights blending with the distant rumble of thunder outside. The storm that had been threatening all afternoon was closing in, and inside the store, the tension felt just as volatile. Bella Hoffman stood rigid, her fists still clenched, her face a mask of defiance and something deeper, fear maybe, or shame she wasn't ready to acknowledge. Leon Carter remained calm, his arms crossed, his gaze steady but not aggressive. The basket of groceries sat untouched on the linoleum floor, a silent witness to the standoff. Marjorie, the elderly woman clutching her can of soup, took another tentative step forward. Her voice wavered, but carried the weight of years spent in this community. "Bella, you've known me since you were a girl. I've shopped here through your daddy's time and yours. This man's done nothing wrong. Let's all take a breath." Bella's eyes flashed, her voice cutting like a blade. "Don't you start, Marjorie. You think you know everything about this place? You don't know what it's like keeping this store afloat, dealing with people who—" She stopped short, her lips pressing into a thin line as if catching herself. "People who what?" Leon asked, his tone still measured but with an edge now, like a teacher calling out a student who'd crossed a line. "Say it, Miss Hoffman. What's the problem here?" Bella's face twisted, a mix of anger and desperation. "You want me to spell it out? Fine. This store's been robbed 3 times in the last year. Windows smashed, cash gone, my livelihood on the line. And every time, it's the same kind of people. You figure it out." The words landed like a punch, raw and unfiltered. Kyle, the stock boy, winced, his eyes darting to the floor. Marjorie gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Bella, you can't mean that," she whispered, her voice breaking. Leon's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. He'd heard worse, felt worse, in moments stretched across his life. Gas station clerks following him through aisles, security guards trailing him in malls, neighbors crossing the street when he walked Aisha to the park. But hearing it so bluntly, in this small store he'd walked into with nothing but a grocery list, lit a fire in him. Not rage, but a fierce clarity. "So that's it," he said, his voice low but carrying. "You see me and you see a thief. Not a teacher, not a father, not a neighbor. Just a skin color and a story you've already written in your head." Bella's cheeks flushed, but she doubled down, her voice rising. "Don't twist this. I'm protecting my store. You don't know what it's like, standing here day after day, watching everything I've worked for get chipped away. You don't get to judge me." "I'm not judging you," Leon said, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm asking you to see me, not your fears, not your past, but me, right here, right now." The store fell silent, the only sound the faint patter of rain starting to hit the windows. Kyle shifted uncomfortably, his sneakers squeaking on the floor. Marjorie's eyes were wet, her hands trembling as she clutched her soup can. The moment felt like it could snap in any direction, toward violence, retreat, or something no one could predict. Then the automatic doors hissed open, and a new figure stepped inside. A man in his early 30s, wearing a damp flannel shirt and work boots, his face weathered from a day on a construction site. His name was Tom, a regular at Harper's, known for his quiet demeanor and quick nods to Bella when he grabbed his evening six-pack. He stopped short, sensing the tension, his eyes flicking from Bella's red face to Leon's steady stance. "What's going on here?" Tom asked, his voice gruff but cautious. He set his toolbox down by the door, rain dripping from his sleeves. Bella seized the chance to shift the narrative. "This guy's causing trouble," she said, pointing at Leon. "Won't follow store rules, acting like he owns the place." Leon raised an eyebrow, but didn't take the bait. "That's not what happened," he said, addressing Tom directly. "I came to buy groceries. She accused me of stealing before I even got to the register. Called me a thief because of how I look." Tom's brow furrowed, his gaze moving between them. He wasn't a man of many words, but he'd grown up in this town, knew its undercurrents, the quiet prejudices that lingered in corner booths and church basements. He scratched his jaw, glancing at Marjorie, who nodded slightly, her expression pleading. "That true, Bella?" Tom asked, his voice low but firm. "You just assumed he was trouble?" Bella's eyes widened, her voice shrill. "Don't you dare take his side, Tom. You know how it is. You've seen the kids who come in here, grabbing stuff, running off. I'm not blind. Kids aren't him," Tom said, his tone sharpening. "You're yelling at a guy with a basket of milk and bread. Come on, Bella. This ain't right." Bella's face crumpled, a mix of fury and humiliation. "You're all ganging up on me now. After everything I've done for this town, I keep this store open when the big chains try to run me out. I'm the one who's here every day, not you." Leon saw the crack in her armor, the way her voice trembled, not just with anger, but with something rawer, exhaustion, maybe, or the weight of holding onto a failing business in a world that felt like it was slipping away. He took a step forward, his voice softer but no less firm. "I hear you," he said. "Running this place can't be easy. I don't know what it's like to stand behind that counter, worrying about every customer, every dollar. But you don't know what it's like to walk into a store and feel like you're already guilty. We're both carrying something heavy. Can we talk about that instead of shouting?" Bella stared at him, her chest heaving, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. For a moment, it seemed like she might soften, might let the wall come down. But then her expression hardened again, and she jabbed a finger at him. "Don't you patronize me. You think you can come in here, play the victim, and make me look like the bad guy? Get out. Now." Tom stepped forward, his voice steady. "Bella, you're out of line. Let the man shop." Kyle, who'd been silent, finally spoke up, his voice shaky. "She's been like this since the break-in. It's not just him. She snapped at Mrs. Delgado last week, too, over nothing." Bella whirled on Kyle, her voice venomous. "You little traitor. You want to lose your job? Keep talking." Marjorie, her voice stronger now, cut in. "Enough, Bella. You're scaring everyone. This isn't who you are. I remember when you used to give out candy to kids at Halloween, when you helped me carry groceries after my surgery. Where's that Bella?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. Bella's hands dropped to her sides, her shoulders slumping, but her eyes still burned with defiance. Leon bent down, picked up his basket, and set it on the counter. "I'd like to pay for these," he said quietly. "And then we can keep talking if you're willing." Bella stared at the basket, then at Leon, her lips trembling. The rain outside grew louder, a steady drum against the windows. Tom, Marjorie, and Kyle watched, the store holding its breath. What happened next would depend on Bella, on whether she could step back from the edge or let her anger consume her. The rain battered the windows of Harper's Market, a relentless percussion that matched the pounding in Bella Hoffman's chest. Her hands shook as she glared at the basket Leon Carter had placed on the counter, its contents milk, bread, zucchini, eggs, mocking her with their ordinariness. The store felt smaller now, the walls closing in under the weight of the confrontation. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across Bella's face, her eyes wild with a mix of rage and desperation. Leon stood opposite her, his posture calm but unyielding, his gaze steady as if anchoring the room. Around them, Marjorie, Tom, and Kyle formed a loose circle, their presence a silent pressure, each waiting for the next move in a standoff that felt like it could ignite or collapse. Bella's voice cracked as she spoke, sharp and venomous. "You think you can just stand there, acting all righteous, and make me the villain? I'm not ringing you up. Take your stuff and get out." She shoved the basket toward him, the plastic handle clattering against the counter. A carton of eggs teetered, nearly falling. Leon didn't flinch. He slid the basket back, his movements deliberate, his voice low, but carrying the weight of a man who'd faced this kind of storm before. "I'm not leaving, Miss Hoffman. Not until you treat me like a customer. Not a thief, not a problem. Just a man trying to buy groceries." The words cut through the air, and Bella's face twisted, her breath coming in short, ragged bursts. "You don't get to tell me how to run my store. This is my life, my family's legacy. You have no idea what it's like, watching everything crumble, while people like you—" "People like me?" Leon interrupted, his voice sharpening for the first time, though he kept it controlled. "Say it, Bella. What do you mean by that?" "Because I'm black. Because I walked in here with a list and a wallet, just like anyone else." Marjorie gasped, her soup can slipping from her hands and hitting the floor with a dull thud. "Bella, stop this," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "You're digging a hole you can't climb out of." But Bella was too far gone, her anger a tidal wave she couldn't hold back. She leaned across the counter, her face inches from Leon's, her voice a hiss. "Don't play the race card with me. I'm not some cartoon villain. I'm protecting what's mine. You think you're so innocent. I've seen the news, the crime stats, the gangs moving into towns like ours. I'm not stupid." The accusation hung in the air, raw and ugly. Tom, standing near the door, took a step forward, his work boots heavy on the linoleum. "Bella, you're way out of line," he said, his voice low but laced with steel. "This man's done nothing but try to talk to you. You're making this about something it's not." "Am I?" Bella shot back, whirling on Tom. "You're gonna stand there and act like you haven't seen it? The shoplifting, the break-ins, the kids who don't even live here tearing through my store? I'm supposed to just smile and let it happen." Her voice broke, and for a moment her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with a frantic intensity, like someone clinging to a sinking ship. Kyle, the stock boy, shifted uncomfortably, his voice barely audible. "It wasn't him, Bella. Those kids last week, they were from the high school, not him." Bella rounded on Kyle, her finger jabbing the air. "Don't you dare, Kyle. You think you know better than me? I've been here 20 years, keeping this place alive while you're still figuring out how to stack cans. You're fired, you hear me? Fired." Kyle's face paled, his mouth opening, but no words coming out. Marjorie stepped between them, her small frame trembling but resolute. "That's enough, Bella. You're lashing out at everyone now. Kyle's a good kid, and this man," she gestured to Leon, "he's trying to reason with you. Why can't you see that?" "Because I don't trust him," Bella shouted, her voice echoing off the shelves. "I don't trust any of this. You all think you can come in here, judge me, tell me how to feel? This is my store, my rules." She slammed her hand on the counter, the sound sharp like a gunshot. The basket tipped, and the zucchini rolled onto the floor, a small, absurd detail in the chaos. Leon bent down, picked up the zucchini, and placed it back in the basket. The gesture was quiet, deliberate, a stark contrast to Bella's fury. "I'm not your enemy," he said, his voice steady, but carrying a weight that silenced the room. "I'm not here to take anything from you. But I'm not going to let you take my dignity either. You're scared, I get it. You're angry. But you're aiming it at the wrong person." Bella stared at him, her chest heaving, her eyes darting between Leon, the basket, and the faces around her. For a split second, something flickered in her expression. Doubt, maybe, or the ghost of the person Marjorie remembered, the one who gave out candy at Halloween. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by a stubborn resolve. "You want to play this game?" she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Fine, I'm calling the cops. Let them deal with you." She reached for the phone behind the counter, her fingers trembling as she punched in the numbers. Tom's eyes widened. "Bella, don't do this. You're making it worse." "Let her," Leon said, his voice calm but resolute. "If that's what it takes to have a real conversation, let her call." He turned to Marjorie, then Tom, then Kyle. "But I want you all to remember this moment. Not just what she's doing, but why. She's not just angry at me. She's angry at a world she can't control. And I'm the easiest target." The words landed like a stone in still water, rippling through the room. Marjorie's hands clasped together, her lips moving in a silent prayer. Tom rubbed the back of his neck, his face torn between frustration and disbelief. Kyle, still reeling from being fired, looked at Leon with something like awe, as if seeing him for the first time. Bella held the phone to her ear, her voice shaking as she spoke. "Yes, this is Harper's Market on Elm. I've got a disruptive customer, refusing to leave. He's threatening me. Send someone now." She hung up, her eyes locked on Leon, a mix of triumph and defiance in her gaze. Leon didn't move. He stood by the counter, his basket untouched, his expression unreadable. The rain outside roared now, a deluge that blurred the world beyond the windows. The store felt like a pressure cooker, every sound amplified, the creak of the floor, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint sob Marjorie stifled with her hand. Tom broke the silence, his voice gruff, but steady. "This is wrong, Bella. You know it is. You're not just hurting him. You're hurting yourself. This store, this town, it's better than this." Bella's lips trembled, but she didn't respond. Her eyes stayed on Leon, as if daring him to break first. But Leon didn't. He stood there, a pillar in the storm, waiting for what came next. The distant wail of a siren cut through the rain, growing louder with each second. The police were coming. The store held its breath, every eye on Leon, on Bella, on the basket that had become a symbol of something far bigger than groceries. What happened next would change everything, not just for them, but for the town watching from the sidelines. The siren's wail grew louder, slicing through the roar of the rain that pounded Harper's Market. Inside, the air was suffocating, thick with the weight of words spoken and unspoken. The fluorescent lights buzzed erratically, casting fleeting shadows across Bella Hoffman's face as she stood behind the counter, her hands gripping the edge like a lifeline. Her eyes, red-rimmed and defiant, were fixed on Leon Carter, who remained by the counter, his basket of groceries untouched, his posture calm but resolute. Marjorie clutched her soup can, her knuckles white, while Tom stood near the door, his work boots leaving wet prints on the linoleum. Kyle, the stock boy, hovered near the canned goods, his face pale, still reeling from Bella's threat to fire him. The store felt like a stage, every player frozen in a moment that could shatter or transform. The siren stopped abruptly, replaced by the crunch of tires on wet asphalt. Red and blue lights flashed through the rain-streaked windows, painting the aisles in eerie pulses. Bella's shoulders stiffened, a flicker of triumph in her eyes, but it was fleeting, overshadowed by something unsteady, fear, perhaps, or the dawning realization of what she'd set in motion. Leon's expression didn't change. He adjusted his glasses, took a slow breath, and spoke, his voice steady as ever. "I hope you're ready to explain this, Miss Hoffman," he said. Not accusingly, but with a quiet authority that made her flinch. "Because I am." Before Bella could respond, the automatic doors hissed open, and 2 police officers stepped inside, their uniforms damp from the storm. The first, a stocky man in his 40s with a weathered face, was Officer Dan Pritchard, a familiar figure in town known for his no-nonsense demeanor. Behind him was Officer Sarangwin, younger, her sharp eyes scanning the scene with practiced precision. Both carried the weight of authority, but their postures suggested caution, as if they sensed the volatility in the air. "What's the situation here?" Pritchard asked, his voice gruff but neutral. He glanced at Bella, then Leon, his hand resting lightly on his belt. Bella straightened, her voice sharp but unsteady. "This man's causing trouble, refusing to leave, making threats. I told him to get out, but he wouldn't listen." Leon raised an eyebrow, his calm unshaken. "That's not what happened," he said, addressing both officers directly. "I came to buy groceries. She accused me of stealing before I even reached the register, called me a thief, and made it clear she doesn't want people like me in her store. I asked to talk it through. She called you instead." Nguyen's eyes narrowed slightly, her gaze flicking to the basket on the counter: milk, bread, zucchini, eggs, nothing more. She looked at Bella, then back at Leon. "You said he was threatening you. What exactly did he do?" Bella's mouth opened, then closed, her hands gesturing vaguely. He's intimidating, standing there, refusing to leave, acting like he's in charge. I've had break-ins, thefts. I can't take chances." Pritchard frowned, his eyes moving to Marjorie, Tom, and Kyle. "Any of you see this? What's the story?" Marjorie stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "Bella's wrong. This man, Leon, did nothing but try to shop. She started yelling at him, accusing him of things he didn't do. It's shameful." Her voice cracked, and she clutched her soupkin tighter, as if it anchored her. Tom nodded, his gruff voice steady. "She's telling the truth." Bella assumed he was trouble the second he walked in. He's been nothing but calm, trying to talk sense. She's the one escalating this. Kyle, his voice barely above a whisper, added, "She's been on edge since the break-in last week. But Leon didn't do anything. She just snapped." Bella's face flushed crimson, her voice rising to a near shriek. "You're all turning on me? After everything I've done for this town?"